Hi everyone, it's Bethany
and Alina.
And we are so excited today to be here with NOC and our friend Donna to tell you more about this amazing organization. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and we will pass them along. We love for this to be interactive, as much Q&A as possible. And if you're also interested in spreading the word and letting people know about NOC and what they're doing in our community, share this video.
That's good. All right.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, y'all. Hi, everybody.
All right, Donna, thank you so much for letting us interview you today and talk. Let's get started talking about you and your history, and then we'll get into NOC.
Awesome. So, hey, everybody. My name is Donna Melakeen. I work here at NOC. That's where we are, which is Minnesota Neighborhoods Organizing for Change. So basically, I came to this country when I was 3 years old to America. I moved from Sudan to east side of St. Paul, East Africa to East St. Paul. I've lived here since I was 3 years old, and now I have pretty much used my experience of like being a refugee in this country who came here from Sudan, who is also like black, and I'm also a woman, and I've used all my intersectional identities to pretty much get me to this point of being an organizer at NOC. I am the Civic and Political Engagement Director, so that means it's my job to get new people involved in the political process, whether that be through elections or caucusing or going to the Capitol or hopping on a freeway, whatever way it is, it's just my job to get new folks involved. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about NOC and a little bit of the history of the organization?
Yes. So I have been at NOC for 4 years. NOC has been around for 6 years. NOC started from this other institution. It was called ACORN. It was this huge national institution that Republicans intentionally tried Republicans, conservatives, various folks tried to take down. And they took it down because it was building so much strategic power. It worked at the intersections of social service and public policy. So providing people services that they needed and also getting them organized in their community and also getting them to turn out the vote. So when that institution fell apart, there had been a bunch of organizers who had worked there who a few years later had decided, we want to keep organizing, we don't want to give up. And so they got this thing called NOC. And like the name is literally like based on the knocking sound, like that's how they made the acronym. Because a lot of the work is based on door knocking, physically knocking on people's doors, going to people's homes, organizing them into the work. And so they got together and they made NOC. The first year, it was led by Steve Fletcher. He was the executive director, who is now a candidate for office for city council. Steve Fletcher started the institution, and after the first year or two, he pretty much realized that it's really hard for a hetero cis white man to be running an institution that had become predominantly black-led. The campaigns we were running were black-led. The wins we were getting impacted black folks directly, and so he actually ended up stepping aside. And Anthony Newby, the organizer at the time, became the executive director. After Anthony Newby was hired, about 2-3 weeks later, he hired me as the office manager. We started as an institution with a $15,000 budget, and now we have about 10 staff, and that was just within the last 4 years. And so we work on public policy at the intersection of public policy and disruption. So yes, we go to the Capitol and we lobby, and yes, like we get on freeways, yes, we do protests, yes, we run boycotts and petitions. So we work at those intersections using whatever necessary tools we need to make sure that we get the wins to address the systemic issues of white supremacy in Minnesota. So yeah, it's kind of like the gist of NOC.
Fantastic. And tell me some of the projects you're working on currently.
Yes, so my job is to get folks engaged. The tools that I use to do that are caucus trainings. So right now, yesterday, we had our caucuses where we had huge turnout. There were some districts in Minnesota that actually had higher turnout this year than in 2016, a presidential year. And so it was our job to train these folks. We trained over 100 folks on how to become delegates. We actually had over 100 NOC members go and become delegates for their wards and city councils and park boards. Next phase, I'm going to train those folks on how do you go to your convention, how do you organize your convention, how do you organize other folks to support your candidate. And then from there, they're going to run. We're going to get these candidates endorsed. And from there, we're going to go all the way to the November election and get these folks in office. So that's one path of the work, which is training people on how to have these skills to, do the work. Second portion is this thing called house parties around Resist, Revolt, Unite. So the idea of Resist, Revolt, Unite is to resist is to say no to the system, but it's also to do something about it. So resistance can look like a lot of different things. To me, the way it looks is that it's not just about like going to the airport and shutting it down for a Muslim ban, but it's also about like housing an undocumented person in your home. That's kind of the path of resistance, an extra step. Revolting looks like doing a direct action. It means going to Trump Towers and not leaving. It means about 2 weeks ago, we actually did an event with a bunch of other folks where we went to the White House lawn and folks stood chained together and refused to leave until they got arrested to make sure Trump knew that 24 million people would die if he did not, or would lose health care, could die if he repealed Obamacare. So that's what like revolting looks like. And then unite is this idea around intersectionality, which is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. And the idea is that we need to unite, but not in a feel-good, lovey-dovey way, but like in a really uncomfortable, tension-filled way where folks push on each other to do better, push on each other to make their work more intersectional. And so that's kind of where that comes from. So we train folks on how to resist, how to revolt, and how to unite, because you have to do all those three things. And when we talk about it, we don't mean not everyone needs to like go chain themselves to the White House lawn, not everyone needs to like house an undocumented person. There are different paths that people can take. I mean, setting up a meeting in your home is like a good step. Setting up an online petition, taking whatever step starts for you and sticking with that path until you can get to a place where you feel comfortable doing bolder things. And that's the kind of the idea around Resist, Revolt, Unite. And it's actually a house party program where we've done over 50 of them so far. We've got about 300 or so people scheduled to do them. And we're focusing on doing them in greater Minnesota. So getting folks that don't live in the cities that want to do this work, getting them trained on these skills, these tactics. And we're doing them all over the state. We actually had a bunch of folks in Wisconsin who just asked us. We've got 7 in Milwaukee coming up. We've done one in Atlanta. We've got some folks in New Orleans. So we're going to be doing them all over the country, training people on this curriculum and giving them the tools they need so they can do this work. And then the third part is the day-to-day organizing. So we have an economic justice organizer who works on getting a $15 minimum wage. We've won a campaign to get paid sick time, which is for every 30 hours you work, you get 1 hour of paid time off in Minneapolis and St. Paul. The policy that we passed with Earn Sick and Safe Time is the most progressive policy in the entire country, the St. Paul policy, and it goes into action in July. But the Republicans at the legislature are trying to stop that by passing this bill called preemption, which preempts cities from making their own policies and takes away your democracy. And so while we've been pushing for all these really cool things, our organizer is working at the Capitol to make sure that they don't take away that right from us. We've also got an environmental justice organizer who's been working not only to you gotta save the whales and the seals, but you also have to make sure you don't have poisonous air in North Minneapolis. You have to make sure you have clean running water in St. Paul, and they're focusing on campaigns like that. We have an education organizer who is working on community schools, which is this amazing idea that is actually based in greater Minnesota, that your school should be a hub for your community. It should be a place where people feel welcome. They can come there to organize. They can come there for services. So you should have direct dollars given to a school so they can decide what they do. So instead of a district saying every school has to look like this and there's a boxed package with a boxed price, it's here are direct resources for your individual school that your community members, neighbors, students, and parents and teachers can decide how to spend it. If they want to open a bank, if they want to open a clinic, if they want to open, a child care center, they can make the decision to do that at their institution by having their own, community governed dollars to do so with a community school. And then, so you've got enviro, education, economic, and then we have safety beyond policing. We used to call this campaign Police Brutality Campaign, but now we call it Safety Beyond Policing. With all of the murders happening, many of them to people close to us, we have decided to move away from the traditional framework of addressing police brutality, but now addressing safety. Because people argue that you need more cops to keep us safe. But we believe cops actually don't keep us safe. They actually don't cut down on crime. So we believe, what does it look like to train your community members to keep you safe? What does it look like when you have a grandmother on your block that has all the kids coming over, she bakes them cookies, she's taking care of them? What does it look like to get her resource so that she can do the community service that she does to keep all those kids safe? Instead of having a police officer that drives around checking for truant kids, what does it look like to resource, your neighbor who's actually doing that work? What does it look like when you have women that are being sex trafficked, teenagers? Instead of getting arrested and taken to jail, they can get sent to a safe place where they can get resources and housing and get away from their abusers. What does it look like to create up a system like that? What does it look like to design a world where if someone is homeless and gets a loitering ticket, you don't take them to jail? Very often, sometimes homeless folks want to go to jail because they need a warm place to sleep. What does it look like when you see them on the street, we actually pick them up and take them to a housing center? What does it look like to provide them security? Right now, we spend over $100 million annually in Minneapolis on the police. What if we spend $100 million annually on keeping the community safe with alternative ideas from policing? We would see much greater results if we were investing $100 million into community members than investing them into police officers, which would then directly cut down on crime, which would actually make police less necessary. And also, very often police officers go to cases that they don't actually have the skills to be a part of. You'll very often see a police officer go to a mental health call. Like, no, you should be sending a trained psychiatrist or psychologist or social worker to that. You have police officers that go to domestic violence situations when sometimes the victim is afraid to talk to a male police officer or even a woman, any form of authority. So we should be looking for alternative ways to keep a community safe. Police officers are meant to hold people accountable for crime, but why don't we have institutions to prevent the crime in general, which is, safety beyond a police officer, which is the way we see our work around that. And so those are pretty much the major lanes of NOC. Yeah, a lot of talking. Hi, everybody.
Fantastic. No, it's great, actually, because I was headed to the question of in what ways do you see NOC improving the community, but you went right into it. I'm going to back up just a little bit and ask a few questions just so people can sort of see how maybe they could plug in, because I bet as people watch this, they're going to get excited about all the good things that NOC is doing. Yeah. So back to... wow, I'm taking a lot of notes here. You are doing great.
I said a lot. I hope it wasn't too bad.
Not at all. So tell me about the sites you've got set on the November election, and if people missed the caucuses or couldn't make it, or right now is not their time, what can they do between now and November to influence elections?
For sure. So Minnesota does a caucus process. I feel kind of some way about it. Because it doesn't really allow for a lot of folks to be engaged. For example, the caucus was yesterday, one day during the whole year for 3 hours. If you don't have childcare, if you don't have an interpreter, if you're nervous, you may miss out on being one of the most powerful people in your political process. One of my leaders was there, and she was terrified. And meanwhile, I've been going to caucuses with my dad since I was 12. And so I'm just like running around, going from room to room. And she's terrified and almost didn't become a delegate because she was too afraid to speak up and give a speech about why she'd be a delegate. And I physically stood there and held her hand, literally held her hand. And seeing that the caucus process can actually deter lots and lots of people who want to be a part of the political process. So I always tell folks, if you don't make it, if you can't make it, don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're isolated out of the process. It's probably one of the most powerful ways you can be a part of the process, but there are so many alternatives. One, everyone that became a delegate, we need to organize them. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of people last night who became delegates. They get to decide who is the endorsed candidate for their political party. And we need to call those people. We need to have coffee with those people. We need to explain why our issues matter. There are folks that went to those caucuses that support 15 and paid sick time who might be supporting a candidate who doesn't, but it's really hard to find that information online. So we need to be having conversations, collecting the data of who became a delegate. The list of who became a delegate doesn't just come out, the next day. It takes a couple weeks for parties to process it. So we need folks to tell us, oh, my sister's a delegate, my brother's a delegate, and get us that information, help us organize these folks, help get them bought into a platform, and then get them organizing folks by the caucuses, by the conventions, which are late April, early May, for Minneapolis and St. Paul. And then after that, Minneapolis has ranked choice voting. So yes, you may have a candidate with a DFL endorsement or not a DFL endorsement, maybe a green candidate, but you get to vote for 3 people. You get to rank your first choice, your second, and your third. So that means no matter what happens at convention day, yes, endorsements help. We have to go all the way to November to make sure our candidates win. Right now, the Minneapolis City Council has a conservative majority. It's creating a huge barrier to getting our policies passed. A lot of folks are just like, on the council are just like standstill, like they're not getting things done. And the clearest way that you can make people do something is by taking them out of office and replacing them with someone who will. And this is like the perfect time to get involved, especially the next few weeks. If you've got a couple of hours free, like show up at NOC. Like literally, I'm not going to say my phone number on the internet, but you go to the NOC website, mnnoc.org. You can definitely come. You can also come down to 1101 West Broadway. And you can also find all our info on our website. And just come on down here and get plugged in. I'm literally here pretty much 10 to 6 every single day, usually Saturdays too. Or find us on Facebook and just get plugged in. There's like unlimited amounts of work to do.
So your focus, is it primarily on city elections, or are you looking at what's going on at the state capitol and who's going to be running for office?
Yeah, so right now, for Minneapolis, we're focused on Minneapolis city races. We're paying attention to the St. Paul mayor race. And in 2018 is a major race where we have opportunity to elect a new governor. Governor Mark Dayton is not running for office. So we need to be planning right now, creating a platform and creating demands for that next person. We need to let people know that, like, anyone who doesn't support 15, like, nope, can't be governor. Anyone that doesn't support racial equity, nope, can't be governor. Anyone that is not pro-choice, nope, can't be governor. We have to make sure that we are getting to a place that the folks that we are supporting are not kind of sort of with us, like you're with us or you're not. And so really starting now, making sure all the candidates that are running for governor or secretary of state or state legislature, whatever position you're running for in 2018, when we have a lot more statewide seats, making sure that those folks know that we're watching and paying attention and crafting our vision and our agenda that we plan to have them follow, or else.
Fantastic. So any well, I won't ask who you might be supporting because I can't do that, but getting into the house parties, let's talk about that a little more, because that's really exciting. Tell me a little bit more about what they're talking about at the house parties, what's getting done.
Yeah.
So you got into that.
So we've been doing house parties all over the place. So I did a house party at the Eastside Freedom Library, which is like an old library that got rehabbed and is like a community space. It's not like a labor history library with Hmong heritage sections too. And literally just their members of the library just showed up, and we just had a conversation around, like, what does it look like to resist? What does it look like to revolt? What does it look like to unite? And they literally were like, we want to do stuff in St. Paul. We want to organize in St. Paul. So now there's like this whole pot of like East Siders that are like, let's go do something. We've been doing them in South Minneapolis, and it's just been so many of them. We've actually created an ally committee at NOC with actually hundreds of members. And they're like creating childcare collectives for meetings. They're out here canvassing in different neighborhoods and just doing all this amazing work. And then we've been going out to greater Minnesota. We went to Bemidji, talked to tons of folks. And that was a few weeks ago. We've got a house party, 2 of them this weekend in Bemidji, 2 more the weekend after, 2 weeks from there, and then we have a NOC member meeting in Bemidji, and we'll probably be starting a chapter out there. So like they're actually resulting in like massive mobilization of people who are like working on things. We've had folks in Bemidji reach out to us about policies they want to create at their state level. They've got candidates they want to run, and so it's just creating a whole other energy. And all we're doing is facilitating a conversation for them around resistance. How do we make sure that the new movements that we're popping up with are not just, sticking to just one specific identity group? How do we make sure that our work is pushing us to further limits? How are we making sure that we're uncomfortable? If your organizing is really comfortable and fun and soft, which is like should be sometimes, but if it's like real easy and you're not being challenged, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough. And so we have those conversations with folks about like how do you push yourself a little bit more, and get them to go do that organizing that they need to do in their communities so that they can build power. And we're really pushing for this idea that we haven't talked about publicly yet, but it's called like rebel cities. So it's this idea of you got a city like Montevideo. It's got 5,000 people. We've got like 10 NOC members out there who want to do really cool stuff. 10 people can actually organize 5,000 people. If each of them finds like 10, 20 neighbors they know, you've got like a little bit of like a voting block set up. And what does it look like to like organize these cities, to get these folks politically engaged, to get them to like run candidates, to push policies? Like you could pass a $15 minimum wage in a city like Montevideo. Like these are things that are possible. And so we want to have these rebel cities, people who are rebelling against what's happening. Who are pushing the envelope. And this idea that you can only do it in Minneapolis and St. Paul is just ridiculous. There are people of color in greater Minnesota. There are poor white folks in greater Minnesota. These folks are being oppressed by the same people. And they're using different tactics, but they're doing it for the same reason, to make sure that they don't get along, they don't work together, they don't create a united vision. And so we're here to like just break that all down. Just like disintegrate this whole rural city divide and just kind of cut through all that and get to the real conversation around how capitalism and racism like both need to be dissolved for greater Minnesota and the city to see any type of like justice served to either one of us.
Excellent. And we were just going to get into a little bit about intersectionality, and you started to go there, so I really appreciate it.
Real quick, how do people get involved? If they want to host a house party, if they want to learn how to caucus with you guys, how do they do that?
Yes, so you can go to our website, which is mnnoc.org, and then I am going to, I should know this, I have a feeling it's mnnoc.org/house parties, or house party. I'm going to get you the direct link before this is over to sign up for a house party.
And we can add it.
Yes, it's /house party. I'll add the link.
Yes. Or, and I think another link too is mnnoc.org/resist, which is where you can sign up for like all our stuff, which is like, it has a survey and you can say like, I want to host a house party or go to a meeting or do that. You can fill out a form that says like what kind of resistance you want to do. And you can opt in there. So sorry, I should have known it off the top of my head.
Oh, that's all right. So
and we shared both those links in the comments for house party and resist.
Thank you.
I could see not going national.
Yeah.
Me
too.
And you guys would be leading the way. This topic of intersectionality. Let's say we've got some listeners and this is a somewhat new concept.
Yeah.
And let's say we've got some who have been really addressing this issue for a long time.
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about and why it's important to NOC and how it feeds into the work that you do?
Yeah. Intersectionality, even like whenever I talk about intersectionality, I always make sure to say who invented it. Who invented the term, which is Kimberly Crenshaw. The reason I do that is because she is a black researcher who is works on amazing public policy, and very often black women, our work gets completely erased. Very often people take credit for it, and that even just saying her name when you just talk about who designed it is really important because it speaks to like the erasure of black women. And the reason why that erasure happens is because of lack of intersectionality. Very often people can only see us as a black person or as a woman, and very often people cannot see us as both. Myself, for example, I'm black, you can tell. But also, like, I'm a refugee, and most people don't see me that way. They don't see that portion of my identity. When you look at the Muslim ban and you see a country like Sudan, that I came from Sudan. My mother came from Sudan also, is not a U.S. citizen. She could not fly on a plane when Trump made that ban. But very often people like her and me are not considered when we have these conversations around who's an immigrant. Very often people think of Middle Eastern folks or Latino folks, but very often forget that black immigrants are left out of these conversations, which is where intersectionality comes from. When you're organizing on an issue, you have to think about everyone that's impacted by the policy. You guys probably have tons of conversation around like the Women's March and how people had like demanded more intersectionality out of it, and they got it, and how key that was, and how that took the march to a whole other scale, and how it added like whole new art. I was at the DC one, and so I was like, it was the most amazing concert also. But it took things to scale. You had Michelle Alexander to Angela Davis to like all kinds of folks, different folks. with different lived experiences, talking about like what it means to be a woman, what it means to deal with sexism, and you added a new layer that often wasn't talked about. For example, mothers, undocumented mothers that are crossing borders or even like hiding their babies in suitcases to get to this country are dealing with a form of sexism that often doesn't get talked about, because when we talk about feminism, we often think it's like cisgendered white women, which is also just not true. It's all women, including the undocumented women, including, you know, the African refugees. And so that's what the idea of intersectionality is. It's like when you think of like feminism, you should be thinking of all women, including trans women, and you know, it's just that idea of like opening the idea of like who is impacted and why, and how do you lift up voices that are often left out.
I'm going to really go off script here, but based
ahead.
on your conversations, how do you see intersectionality and really embracing that and bringing it into the work that we do, and being okay with being uncomfortable, that necessary part? How do you see all of that playing roles in having the major win, the win where our candidates reflect our values, where our candidates are in Washington or at the Capitol or in our city hall offices representing us and fighting racism and combating sexism and protecting immigrants and protecting reproductive rights? How do we get from where we are now to where we want to see us going?
Yeah. I can like share like a story for me. One of my really, really good friends, we had been friends for years. And that friend had like stopped talking to me for about like 6 months, but I'm a busy person. They're busy too. And I just assumed they were busy. And they had been going on vacations, having fun, and I see them on Twitter. And then one day they just called my phone and I answered. I was like, oh, hey, what's up? And they were like, hey, I'm really scared to tell you this. I'm like, tell me what? They were like, oh, I'm transitioning. My new name is X. And they told me. And I was like, that's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Let me know what support you need. And they're like, wow, I was really scared to tell you because I didn't know what you were going to think. And I just was like, whoa. I was like, what am I doing that like my friends think that I wouldn't be supportive of that? And I really tried to reflect on it, and I was like, none of my work includes trans women. None at all. And oh my God, I'm gonna cry now. I just got emotional. Oh Lord. And it really hurt. And it was just like, and I could have been like, wow, you just assumed I'm transphobic. Or I could have just like not thought about it at all and supported them and moved on. But I've actually since then been very intentional to include trans women in my organizing. And like, I took it as an opportunity to like grow and do better, because I'd never want my friends to feel that way. And so that's like one way, is that like when you do get called out, I mean, mine wasn't as much a call out, but when those situations happen, pushing yourself to think about it more.
Yeah.
Spend more time reflecting on your organizing. One thing I always say, when I first started organizing, every room I was in was all white. Just meeting after meeting after meeting. And I was just like, is this how this is going to be? I was like, is just every meeting's going to be all white? And asking the question when you're sitting in an all white room, like, why is it all white? Where are the trans folks? Like,
sure.
And not making sure that you fill these rooms with tokenized people, but very often, you know, people of color, sometimes we're not in the room because we don't have the resources or the training or the XYZ to do it. So making sure we invest in leaders so they have those skills, not just tokenizing them into a space, but like investing in their leadership, adding their experiences to our conversations. Those are the type of things that I think take us to a whole other level. I don't think it can be as simple as like adding 2 people to your committee or adding this to your like, you know, press release, but like actually like intentionally thinking about it and intentionally developing leaders into these spaces. And then another piece too is resources. People don't have money to like go to trainings and like come to all these meetings. So like, what can we do to like compensate folks when they come to these spaces? How do we make sure they have childcare, transportation, and it costs more money to do organizing right, and that's just true. You know, when if it's it costs more money to just do organizing right because people of color don't have resources to just pay for things on their own. And so people of color, trans folks, all the oppressed identities. And so it's just about being intentional about the way you're investing our resources and how we're doing it, and if we're investing in these people. And it takes time and it costs a lot of money, but you get a much greater impact. You win much more beautiful elections. I think a great example is Ilhan Omar. Like, it was like people were so comfortable with Phyllis Khan, who's great, you know, But like Ilhan Omar is now on the floor of the Capitol, the hugest advocate for women and racial equity on the Capitol floor we've ever seen. And we could have missed out on that by being lazy about our intersectionality. But instead we got uncomfortable, we supported her, we pushed her, we got her in, and now we're having conversations at the Capitol that never would have existed. And so, like, that's why it's so important, because there are missed opportunities when we do. It's not lazy organizing, because, like, who really has all the capacity and time to do it? But when you go that extra mile, you actually end up getting a much greater result. You get Ilhan Omar. So,
that deeper level thinking of who is coming to the table and what it takes in terms of providing for resources to allow that to happen. And make sure you really have some equity there. It sounds like similar to Steve Fletcher, recognizing the scope of your organization and making that space for Anthony Newby by moving on to his own endeavors. And, excellent. Well, okay, so just a quick recap. How can people get involved? How can they help NOC?
You guys, I'm so tempted to just say my phone number on the internet.
That's okay. Send people to your website. It's fine.
That's my desk number, not my cell phone. I once did a presentation at a church, and there were like 200 people there, and these 200 people still text me. So,
all right, so don't text Wintana.
Yeah.
Lots of texts.
I was like, what? I mean, they were like texting me like 6 in the morning. I was like, man, y'all are up early. But my desk phone is 612-235-6009. So that's 612-235-6009. That's my desk number. You can call, leave me a message. I'll get it. I'll get the message. Also, it goes to my email too. You can shoot me an email at wintana@mnnoc.org. Shoot me an email, a message. Feel free to contact me anytime. And I would love to get you plugged in. There's a million ways to do it. There's a million things to do. We have things set up at all different skill levels, like resistance levels. So if you want to get plugged in, just shoot me a message and we'll do it. We'll get it done.
Excellent, Wintana. Thank you so much. You are an inspiration.
Are there any ways? I know we said just a few more questions, quick. We said the resist. We shared the house party link. If people want to become a member of NOC or contribute financially, are there ways to do that as well?
Yes. So if you want to contribute to NOC, you can go to mnnoc.org/membership or mnnoc.org/donate. If you become a member of NOC, you can sign up for different levels. $10 membership makes you a member of NOC, which is a dues-paying member, which means you get to vote on who's on our board and how we decide priorities and all those types of things. And you can go right to our website and sign up for a membership, mnnoc.org/donate. You can like give any dollar amount, everything from like $1 to like $20,000, whatever you can. All that you give is goes directly into this work. It directly employs Black people. We have a majority Black staff of all different identities, from different immigration statuses to different educational backgrounds, different lived experiences, and that work directly funds a Black-led, Black organized institution, and there are very, very, very few of us across the country. Even less in Minnesota. So your dollars go directly to creating all this amazing work that we do here. So.
And we're so grateful for all the work you're doing.
Thank you
We
for having
are
us.
such an inspiration. Thank you, Wintana.
Awesome. Thank you.